Township Zoning Hearing Board of Thursday, September 20th, 2018. Present at the front table to my far right is Ken Richardson, a voting member. To my immediate right, Bill Rhodes, a voting member. My far left, Ed McGargy, a voting member. My far left, Kel, do you want to be introduced?
I'm sorry?
Kelly, the Director of Code Enforcement for Haverford Township.
Correction, not Director of Code Enforcement.
What is the correct?
I am the zoning officer and community planner.
We'll get it right next time, Kel. We also have Ed Casoli, a voting member. To my left, our esteemed solicitor, Bill Malone. Mr. Richardson, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Please rise and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have one decision, two continued cases, and three new cases on the agenda this evening. We'll do the decision first. It is case Z18-23, Matthew and Astrid Mariani, owners of 598 Haverford Road, Haverford, PA, who seek a variance from the provisions of Section 182-711B2 to allow the addition of a 667 square foot floor area to the existing 788 square foot non-conforming detached garage. Property is zoned R2 and located in the 5th Ward. Mr. Rhodes, would you please take that decision?
Yes, I would, with respect to the variance requested in application Z18-23, vote to deny the application.
Okay. Mr. Richardson?
I concur.
Mr. McGargy?
I agree.
Mr. Casoli?
I agree.
So do I. That application is denied 5-0. The next case we'll call this evening is Z18-26, Oakmont Realty Partnership, owners of 29-31 East Eagle Road, Havertown, PA, DC folios number 2203-00815000 and 2203-00816000, to seek a variance from the provisions of Section 182-707B, parking, to allow a standard restaurant at 29 East Eagle Road, without providing the required off-street parking, and a variance from the provisions of Section 182-707B, parking, to allow a rooftop dining area at 31 East Eagle Road without providing the required off-street parking. In addition, a variance or permission is requested to allow the conversion of the existing fabric canopy at 31 East Eagle Road to a permanent structure in conformity with the notes of testimony of Zoning Hearing Board Order Z02-04. Property is zoned C3 and located in the 3rd Ward.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Kane, Mr. Malone, members of the Zoning Board. My name is Joe Matson. I'm an attorney and member of the Delaware County and Pennsylvania Bar Associations with an office here in Havertown, representing the applicant, Oakmont Realty Partnership. I am respectfully requesting a 2-week continuance of this matter. We understand there is going to be some opposition, and we'd like the time to see if we can work out those issues. I've talked to the solicitor, and I don't believe he sees there's a problem there.
Sure, Mr. Matson, you're aware that this board is required to commence proceedings on an application within certain time periods after the filing of that application. Are you, on behalf of your client, waiving those time constraints?
So waived, Mr. Malone, and the waiver is of record.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, unless there's an objection from one of the board members, this case will be continued to our, which hearing?
October 4th.
October 4th hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Kane.
You're welcome. Thanks. See you, Joe. See you guys. Bill, do you have the letter for this one?
Yes. Hold on. Give me 1 second.
Good? Okay. Just an administrative matter, we have case Z18-25, which is listed as a new case this evening. Judith Sorit, owner of 26 East Clearfield Road, Haverford Town, PA, DC folio number 2203-0047800, who seeks a variance from the provisions of Section 182-206B1 to allow a 20-foot by 30-foot two-story addition for the purpose of an in-law suite with a kitchenette. Property is zoned R4 and located in the 3rd Ward. I believe we received a notice of a request to withdraw this application. Mr. Malone?
Mr. Kane, we received a letter dated September 6, 2018, from the applicant asking to withdraw this matter.
Okay. That application is withdrawn. Our first continued case this evening is Z18-17. Denis and Annemarie Friel, owners of 155 Coopertown Road, Haverford, PA, who seek a variance from the provisions of Section 182-727B to allow placement of a 54-inch high estate fence in the front yards on Coopertown Road and College Avenue. Property is zoned R1 and located in the 5th Ward. Hello?
Good evening. Dawn Tancredi here on behalf of Denis and Ann Friel. So the last time that we were here, the board asked for a letter from the architect that indicated where the architect obtained the information for the plans, specifically the setbacks regarding the right-of-way. And we did provide the letter from the architect, which indicated that the fence was outside of the right-of-way, only to later speak with the township and learn that the architect relied on tax map information rather than another subdivision survey that showed different setbacks. So based on the survey, the fence is indeed within the right-of-way. And so Coopertown Road here is a state highway, a state road, and what we would ask for this evening is conditional approval based on approval from PennDOT.
To leave the fence within the right-of-way, or to, are you?
We'd like to keep the fence where it is rather than move it at this time because of the expense that would be expended to move it, and talk with PennDOT about leaving it here until such time that PennDOT may need that right-of-way.
So do you think it's within this board's purview to grant a conditional variance or a variance of any nature to place anything within the right-of-way?
You're asking if I think the
You
board...
think we have the authority to approve a variance to place something within PennDOT's right-of-way, essentially until they catch it, question it, or?
Well, it's basically asking that we hold the final decision until PennDOT issues its decision.
So you're going to affirmatively request a waiver from PennDOT?
Yes.
Bill?
So for the record, when they came back with the subdivision plan that shows the right-of-ways on College and Coopertown, for the benefit of the record, do you want to at least explain how far the fence is currently encroaching? And my understanding from the zoning officer is that it's a 50-foot right-of-way, and that the township wouldn't allow you generally to build within 20 feet of the outer edge of the right-of-way. Is that so? It would be 45 feet from the center line? I'm not sure. I just want to make sure we understand. Not only, even if we could give you what you want, I'd like to know what it is that you're asking for, how much variance.
Okay. So the fence on the College Avenue side is not within the right-of-way,
Okay, and the right-of-way
There's no
on
issue
College
there.
is,
but on the Coopertown Road side, the fence is 4 feet within the right-of-way.
4 feet within the right-of-way, so perhaps the zoning officer could help on this one a little bit, or just help me. So it's a 50-foot right-of-way on Coopertown?
So, since you used to be on the planning commission, so you may have a little bit of familiarity with this. When they did the subdivision in 1978, they requested additional right-of-way for that subdivision. So they are basically the only people on the street that have, as measured from the center of the road, 25 feet of right-of-way on Coopertown Road. So it's not technically a 50-foot right-of-way because the other side of the street still has 16 and a half. So, but their side is, so their side is 25 feet. So that fence is encroaching by 4 feet. The College Avenue side does seem to be out of the right-of-way by about a foot. Obviously still encroaching into the front yard setback, which is why we're here. So they would need variances to place the fence on either frontage to encroach into the front yard setbacks. But then we have the additional hurdle with Coopertown Road with it being already placed within the right-of-way.
Okay, so is it fair to say that, Counselor, you're going to need two variances, one on College, because although you're not in the right-of-way, you're in the township setback from the right-of-way?
Yes,
Okay, and you're within a foot of the right-of-way, outside the right-of-way on College, but the setback requirement for the township,
Our R1 has 50-foot frontages and does not have provisions for a secondary frontage. So both sides would be 50 feet from the center, or from the edge of the right-of-way.
so we need a variance for that, which in theory might be within our purview. And then on Coopertown, you're 4 feet within the right-of-way before we even get to the variance to put a fence within the setback, right?
right. We would like to be able to have the opportunity to reach out to PennDOT and seek their approval.
So would you rather withdraw the application now and go and talk to PennDOT and come back with their blessings, and then we can figure out the setback variances?
Well, procedurally, we're here to work with the board and the township. There are other permit applications that my client would like to apply for, and we would not want the continuance of this case to hold that up, since we have been working with the township on these issues.
So how are those other permit application processes relate to the fence?
They're unrelated.
Well, no, the pool permit is very related to the fence. We can't issue them a pool permit without there being
I'm sorry, I
a
didn't
fence
understand.
that's appropriate for a pool. And since since that fence is currently in a limbo state, that's holding that up.
So one other procedural question then. If we wait for PennDOT and the application period expires, it's deemed,
It would be deemed approved, yes.
right?
What, an option that I was thinking, and actually I would really like Bill to weigh in on this, Bill Malone, sorry, is that if you did make it a condition of approval, that they were allowed to encroach into the into the setback, and it remain in the right-of-way pending HOP approval for a highway occupancy application from PennDOT. I'm not sure if that would work, but that's a thought.
All right, so my concern is that we have a fence that is erected already,
But
a fence that is already there.
correct.
And simply withdrawing would leave it where it is with no assurances of resolution of that issue. My suggestion is not to grant a conditional approval because we don't know what PennDOT is going to say, and that could bring you right back here as well. What I'm recommending to this board is that we continue the matter until October 18th to give you opportunity to immediately reach out to PennDOT and get the ball rolling in that regard. That keeps us within the timeframes where there's no worries about deemed approvals because we're still within the timeframe for the proceedings to commence.
You can ask for a waiver of the time constraints.
I'm going to do that as well. What I also would suggest and ask for as well, since this is really not a board issue, but an issue that's just raised by the fact that the fence has been placed there, that applicant does waive the time constraints associated with continuing the matter, holding hearings, and rendering a decision so that we are not facing any deemed approval issues. And will applicant do that?
It's fine.
Okay. And would applicant agree to a continuance to October 18th with the understanding that if you don't have it at October 18th, we may then have to look at things a little bit differently, but at least there we'll have an update for this board.
To look at November?
Possibly. It'll depend on what steps you've taken with PennDOT, what they've said to you. We'd like some indication as to when you reached out to PennDOT, interactions that you've had with PennDOT, and really where we stand and the likelihood of receiving that approval from PennDOT.
Right, we can certainly reach out to PennDOT. I just don't know that it would be resolved by October 18th.
Right, I just don't want I don't want it to linger as well. What we have is a fence that is, as we sit here today, not legal, so I don't want to just suggest to the board an open-ended continuance, so I want to keep it moving by bringing this back so that we can address this in a timely manner. If you determine in advance, say, of the October 4th hearing that PennDOT is not going to have an answer by October 18th, perhaps reach out to me and we can address it with the board at that October 4th hearing.
I would also suggest that given that Exhibit A1, which was the original plot plan, was adjusted once, and now you actually know where your right-of-ways are, and I would like to see this same chart showing the right-of-way and the required setbacks so we can see the existing fence now plotted into, in the College Avenue side, the right-of-way, into the setback, and then the Coopertown, where it is within the right-of-way, to get I think, a visual understanding now that we know all the facts on the ground.
That's fine. I would ask, is there any way to mark this matter so that my client is able to proceed with other permit applications?
Minus the pool permit, I don't think that there would be any other issues with proceeding with any other permits.
And my advice to this board really would be that you can't proceed on the pool permit as well. I'd agree with Ms. Kirk that that would be an issue since the fence is not presently allowed.
But to the extent that the permits are unrelated to anything relative to this fence, that's not a matter for this board, that's a matter for Kelly to determine in the codes office. Does that answer your question?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The pool permit, though, I'm a little concerned about because it's not going to be, the pool's not going to be in the front yard, so you're not asking for a variance for the pool, are you? So there is a way to build the pool by putting a fence around it specifically.
Yes, the pool is in the back.
Right, so there could be a fence around the pool. So it's, because it's putting the board in a position where you're going to want to apply for a pool permit, and we might not give you the fence permit. So we have not made that decision yet. So I would look for alternatives for the pool as well. So you still be able to have it.
Okay. Any other questions, Ken?
No.
Thank you, Solly.
No.
Nope.
No other questions.
Okay. And is there anything else you'd like to add, Dawn?
That's it.
Okay. With that, we'll continue this case to our October 18th hearing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, our next continued case is Z18-24, Siam Anand and Shrija Siam, owners of 2100 County Line Road, Ardmore, PA, DC folio number 2206-0068400, who seek a variance from the provisions of section 182727C4 to allow a 3.5-foot high estate fence in the primary front yard of County Line Road. The property is zoned R6 and located in the 6th Ward. Hello?
If I could, Mr. Kane, at the last Ready? If I could, Mr. Kane, at the last hearing on September 6th, the matter was continued for the applicant to present a plot plan showing the actual measurements of where the fence will be and to label on that plot plan, where the fence will be, and to label on that plot plan the, what is considered the front yard and what is considered the side yard. The board did ask that it be drawn to scale, so that determinations could be made regarding where the fence is or would be allowed, and to also allow the board members to ask additional questions regarding the placement of the fence. The last exhibit was Exhibit A4, so I believe we've just been handed a new schematic of the proposed fence, which then would be Exhibit A5. So just hold on one second while we have it marked.
Please proceed.
So following last hearing, I went back to the township office and they sent me an email showing where the variance is required and where exactly, like how much setback is needed, and some clarifications for the right of way on County Line Road as well as Roland Road, since it is a corner property. So the new schematic I have drawn incorporates what probably the township has already shared with you. I think they have a diagram they have sent with a yellow highlight showing where the variance is required, and and behind that where the variance is not required. The point of my exhibit is to show that the fence will be 25 feet from the center of County Line Road, so it won't be in the right of way, and it will the variance is required for the 20 feet setback. I am normally required to leave between the property and the road. So that I have marked like 45 feet there. That shows the required setback. That is 25 feet of right of way and 20 feet of setback that is required for the primary front yard. On the Roland Road, the right of way is 33 feet, and if you measure 16.5 from the center of Roland Road, it will end up in the sidewalk. So the fence is going to be set back by further by 1.5 feet, so 18 feet from the center of Roland Road. So it won't be in the right of way on that road also. So basically the fence won't be in the right of way, but the variance might be required for the setback.
Ed Casoli
Nothing at this time.
and McGarty?
On your plot plan that you submitted here, I do see faintly some pink lines or red line in the background at 45 feet.
Yeah, that's the shaded region that is required as a setback, like 20, and that incorporates the 20 feet plus 20 feet of setback and 25 feet of right of way. That's just to indicate, like if I were not coming here for a variance, I would have been allowed to fence till that portion.
You would be allowed to fence in the pink portion?
No, not into the, I mean
Would not be
like,
allowed to fence in the
yeah, would not be allowed there, but till there.
But the only relief that you're looking for at this point is this pink area, which is 45 feet
Yeah,
from the
yeah,
center of county
yeah.
line.
That's supposed to be great printed out pink, I'm sorry.
The Roland Road side is, other than the initial 45 feet from county line on Roland side, would be acceptable with the zoning, so you don't have to have a variance for that? All the way down to your garage, which,
The portion of fence that goes forward of the house essentially is all part of the front yard, so all of that is
all the way
encroachment.
down to here.
No, to where you put the pink line. Everything within that area.
that's the 45 feet, even though it's a front yard. Okay.
I'm confused. I thought you said it has to be from the front edge of the house.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the other plot plan, where it's showing the secondary frontage in orange. Which he's allowed to do in R6. R1, with our previous case, does not have a secondary frontage.
Yeah, my understanding is that for the primary frontage, variance is required from the front of the house, any fence that's in front of the house on the primary frontage.
That's usually what we use as a general guide, so especially when it's on a busy road, so we don't have people running out in the middle of the street. But the fence needs to clear the front yard setback as measured from the right of way.
Oh, one more question. Is this fence erected already?
I had put up a little bit of it, like I didn't complete it because I wanted to approach for a permit. That's when I realized that there is a violation and they gave me a notice of violation. Then I applied for the hearing. So it's not completely erected, I just put some panels
You
in.
received the notice of violation from the township?
And since then I have been contacting and talking to her as well as John. So I stopped doing anything with that. Stopped it right there.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr.
the only
Regarding.
other issue that was discussed at the last meeting, and I don't know if this 2 feet makes a difference or not, was a concern that was voiced about the intersection and site variances and whether they were going to angle the corner of the fence. You remember that
Yeah, I
testimony?
remember, and I talked to John about that and trying to find out if there is any requirements or rules, or I should check with other departments. And I was told that since it is an estate fence and it's only 3.5 feet, I can see through it, like everyone can see through it, it should not be a problem.
No, but
And it's going to be set back by 2 feet anyway from the sidewalk, so there will be enough clearance there.
that's what I'm trying to get at. So you think because of the sidewalk width and the setback of additional 2
Yes,
feet,
yes.
that the visibility should not be impacted?
Should not be a problem at all.
I understand. Thank you.
What is the purpose of this fence?
It's just to protect my kids from running into the street because they go around the house and they come to the front and their friends also come and play there, and it's become very busy street and it's a corner also, so like they can go into that road as well as this road, and people take that sharp turn and it's very dangerous. Like there have been occasions where I had to run and like stop them from doing that because there is also bikes involved coming from South Ardmore Park. A lot of people go there for biking and skating, and the sidewalk is like a slope. People skate also on the sidewalk, so if you don't have something there, like these are small kids, like I can tell them, but it's really dangerous for them, especially when it's sloping down the Roland Road. Like that corner is really unsafe for them.
Can I see the exhibits one time? Kenny, questions?
Yeah, we, at the prior hearing, we discussed the property line and whether the fence was going to be a foot away, it's going to be on the property line.
Yeah, I checked with the township and I was told that it has to be on the property line, and there should not be a no man's land behind between the property line and the neighbor's property. So it'll be on the property line.
That's all I have.
So I just wanted to make sure I understand it. I realize the fence isn't in the right of way, but rather than having the additional 20 feet, what you're asking for is 18 feet of variance to be 2 feet outside the right of way rather than 20 feet outside the right of way. Right? So along the county line front?
I'll be leaving 25 feet from the center of County Line Road. So that would clear the right-of-way completely.
Okay, so you're putting, you'd like to have a variance that allows you to put the fence on the edge of the right-of-way?
No, I'm fine, like, moving further back also, like.
Okay, well,
What I wanted to say is that I'm not asking for putting a fence into the right-of-way. Like,
Understood,
I'm not
right.
encroaching into that.
and this is this A1? Is this a new A1? Is that, what do we call this?
5.
A5.
A5, okay. So this A5 shows that you're going to propose to put the fence along County Line on the edge of the right-of-way.
Behind the right.
Behind it, but on the edge. And so you're asking for a variance to relief from 20-foot setback, right? So, and I realize a part of this is for safety for your kids that you want to put the fence. Is there a lesser amount than 20 feet of relief that would serve your same purposes? In other words, we're trying to figure out how much variance do you really need?
I thought about that. The thing is, if I put a fence anywhere behind that, it will be like right in the middle of my front yard, sort of. And it wouldn't look that good also. So that's another concern I have, like taking it really closer to the property. Apart from that, I don't have a concern. Like, I could even fence without a variance and still have that. But again, I end up doing it in the middle of the property and I won't be able to take care of it well.
And just to give me a sense of depth here, as the fence as proposed on A5, which is on the right-of-way edge, back to the front edge of your house, of the residence, do you know what that distance is?
That will be around 34 feet.
34 feet?
Yeah, approximately.
I don't have any other questions.
Ed? Ed? Either Ed?
No.
No other questions.
Any?
No more.
Okay. Record complete. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's all.
Okay. With that, I'll ask if there's anyone present that received certified mail about this case that wishes to testify? Anyone present that received regular mail? Any other residents of Haverford Township? With that, we'll close the record on this case, and a decision will be rendered at our next regularly scheduled meeting on October 4th.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Mr. Wagner. That leaves us Haverford School, correct?
Yes.
Why don't we take a 5-minute recess, and Haverford School, you can come set up whatever exhibits you have, so Ed can't give the signal. All owners of a parcel of land adjacent to 539 Panmure Road who seek a special exception from the provisions of Section 182902F, authorizing the issuance of a temporary permit to allow the use of the tennis courts for modular temporary classrooms during construction of the new middle school, and a de minimis variance to extend the permit period 2 years. Property is zoned INS institutional, R1A, and located in the 5th Ward. Mr. Edelson, I presume.
Yes, sir. Good
Good
evening,
evening.
members of the zoning hearing board. I'm Jim Edelson. I'm senior counsel of the law firm of Royer, Cooper, Cohen, and Braunfeld in Conshohocken in Philadelphia. I'm here representing the Haverford School, the owner of the property located at 450 Lancaster Avenue in Haverford. A portion of that property is located in Haverford Township on a parcel adjacent to 539 Panmure Road. The school has existed there since 1884, and over the years has improved the property with a number of academic buildings, gymnasium, athletic fields, and parking areas. And we're here this evening, as was stated, to seek a special exception under 182-902F and 182-1004A2, and a de minimis variance under 182-1004A1, to allow temporary installation of modular classrooms on the existing tennis courts. And this is to be done during the school's proposed construction of a new middle school. Middle school is located in the center of the campus in Lower Merion Township. The school's intention is to replace the current two-story portion of an existing Crossman Hall with a new three-story wing. And we refer a copy of the school's application, as was stated, as Exhibit 1 and ask for its admittance. Tonight, you'll hear testimony from each of the project's expert consultants confirming that this proposed plan meets and complies with the goals, objectives, and standards of the Haverford Township zoning code and also the comprehensive plan. The total site is 25 acres, of which 5 acres is located in Haverford Township. The Haverford Township portion of the property is split zoned between INS and R1A districts. Testimony tonight by our witnesses will confirm that the school proposes to demolish a two-story portion of the existing Crossman Hall and replace it with a three-story middle school addition. The reason I mention that is although there'll be no increase in the student population plan, there's no increase in staff, no increase in volunteers or visitors beyond that which has been previously approved. This adjustment, though, is necessary, as you'll hear tonight, to upgrade the outdated middle school classroom and replace it with a larger portion of the middle school wing, this wing to address present and future changes in the profession of teaching. During the proposed construction, the school plans to provide temporary classrooms on its existing tennis courts. These are located on school property within Haverford Township, and as such, their installation requires separate approval from Haverford Township. I might state that as of this date, Lower Merion has granted a special exception for the expansion of this particular project and now is proceeding with land development. As you'll see from the plans and testimony to follow on behalf of the applicant, the project is in line with the purpose, intent, and applicability of the Haverford Township zoning code and meets the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, and that the allowance of its request for special exception and a companion de minimis variance approval won't be contrary to or nor adversely affect the public health, safety, and welfare of the community. I'm joined this evening by Dr. John Noggle, the headmaster of Haverford School, representing the owner, Martin Pesch, principal of Wallace Robertson Todd, the project designer, and Patrick Spellman, site engineering concept, the project engineer. So with your permission, I'd like to call our first witness.
Okay, Jim, do you want to identify the exhibits for the record now, or do you want to do it as you proceed?
I can do it as I proceed. I think it'll make a little more sense if I do it. It's up to, if it's okay with you.
That's cool.
Okay.
We'll do it as you proceed.
So I'd like to call Dr. John Noggle. Dr. Noggle, would you
I
provide...
need to swear you. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And your full name and the occupation in which you appear this evening for the board, please?
John I. Noggle, I am the 9th headmaster of the Haverford School.
And how do you spell your last name, John?
November Alpha Golf Lima.
Okay.
And Dr. Noggle, as headmaster of the school, how long have you been in that position?
I've just completed my 5th year in that role.
And is it fair to say that you're representing the applicant, which is the owner of the subject property?
It is.
Is the Haverford School an accredited educational institution?
Indeed it is. It is accredited by the Pennsylvania Association of Independent Schools and the Middle States Association of Colleges, Schools and Colleges.
Would you please provide for the board a brief description of the current middle school conditions, which bring us to this?
The current middle school is housed in about 18,000 square feet of Crossman Hall. Crossman Hall was built in 1952 on the foundations of a previous boarding component of the school, which burned to the ground. It was designed initially for 7th and 8th grade. As kids have matured more rapidly, it's pedagogically appropriate now for 6th graders to be considered middle schoolers. And so we've jammed 6th grade into that building. It was originally designed for 7th and 8th graders. The building is barely acceptable for current pedagogy. I'm limited in the teaching I can do. I'm unable to flip classrooms, to break kids into study groups, to do all sorts of things because I physically have more kids in the building than it was designed to handle. And I have mold.
You have mold.
And I have mold.
Can I have that stricken from the record? In your capacity as the headmaster, is it fair to say that you have reviewed the plans and are familiar with the plans which are the subject of this application?
It is.
And is it also fair to say that the proposed addition is necessary to accommodate and address and remediate and improve the conditions that you've described?
It is. The new plans are a 3-story, 30,000 square foot building replacing the current 18,000 square foot 2-story building. And we're bringing everything above grade, so we no longer have boys in the basement.
And equally important, with respect to the operation of the school as a result of this project, is it fair to say that the project won't result in any increase in middle school population?
I have no plans to increase the number of middle school boys. That is correct.
And also that there is no planned increase in the total school population beyond that, the total school population, beyond that which was previously approved for Haverford School.
That is correct.
And with no planned change in population, is it also fair to say that there's no planned change in the amount and frequency of public access, such as teachers, staff, public?
I am considering adding Chinese to my middle school, which would probably be one additional teacher. And I am building a classroom to do that, so that statement is not completely correct. I may add one teacher, but I will try to look for a small one.
And also that there's no planned change in days in operation of the school?
There are no planned changes in days of operation.
And also, finally, no planned change in regularly scheduled events other than those commonly associated with like educational institutions?
That is correct.
So is it also fair to say that this project, which is the subject of this application, is being driven solely by the need for certainty and to ensure the continuity of the education program during construction of the middle school?
You are now speaking of the plans to, no, you're now, you're talking now about the trailers.
Yes.
The temporary learning village to be built on the tennis courts. I need a place to put the boys while Crossman Hall has been demolished and before the new building is built. And so from June or July, I think, of 19, we hope to put the trailers on the tennis courts, and we hope to remove them in August of 20 prior to opening the new building. It's about a 15-month plan to build a new building.
Well, equally important, have you had a chance, or has the school had a chance to meet and discuss these proposed plans with the local neighbors and residents?
We have.
And how would you describe, when was that meeting?
April? Was it April?
And how would you describe the reaction to that?
The meeting was cordial. The neighbors were pleased that we were building on the center of the campus. They agree that the building, Crossman Hall, has outlived its useful purpose. They are very pleased that we are not taking up any parking places while we're doing this building. And so the residents of both Lower Merion and of Haverford who were present at the meeting we held to discuss this with the neighbors were very amenable to the idea.
Questions from?
Okay. Questions? Kenny?
Yeah, the Haverford Township neighbors, do you know how many were there, or how many are affected directly by it? What on Pannier Road?
So Panmure Road itself is, all of the residents of Panmure Road either are employees of the Haverford School or are students or one faculty member, the Dean of Faculty of Haverford College. So they will, those would be the only residents on Panmure Road who would be directly affected. Then we've got folks behind us We had, I think, only one couple from Haverford Township came to that meeting, although we advertised it broadly.
That's all I got. Can I just need to ask one preliminary question. The middle school, the new building, will that be financed?
No, we think it's going to come in at 17.5? 17.5 or 17,
Yeah,
so no.
The cost isn't concerned, but my firm is your bond counsel, and I have to figure out if I need to abstain on
I understand.
a zoning matter.
No, we've raised, we're at 7.5, I think, and the other 10 is from internal funds.
All right, so you've got enough committed or whatever that you're not going to the markets.
No, in fact, we retired debt last year.
Okay, so I just had,
Good news, bad news.
yeah, good news, bad news.
It's good news and bad news.
So I just want to know on the temporary buildings that will be placed on the tennis court on Panmure, no ability to enter into those buildings off Panmure, so that there's no likelihood of a parent doing a quick drop-off on Panmure as opposed to using the regular access?
I think that we have some exhibits which will show that, and also, that will address that. To answer your question, you're exactly right. No, there won't be any additional access. But I think the exhibits and the testimony corroborate that.
Hey, Kazuli,
No questions.
Ed McGargy?
Yeah. On Exhibit A3, I don't know if this one's entered yet, or I'm trying to figure out where the township line is.
Can we, when we get to Exhibit A, maybe give you more edification on that, or it's up to you?
Okay.
I think it'll make more sense, I think, but I'll be happy to have it addressed now.
Okay, we'll see.
Okay, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nolan. I'd like to call Martin Pesch. Would you care to?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And your full name and the capacity in which you appear this evening for the board, please?
My full name is Martin Pesch, spelled P-E-S-C-H, and I'm an architect and campus planner.
Mr. Pesch, where are you employed?
I'm employed with WRT.
Okay, and can you provide a brief summary of your education and experience?
I have a master's degree in urban design and architecture, and I have worked in the architecture and planning field about 32 years, mostly focused on educational campuses, both planning and implementation architecture.
And respectfully, we would refer a copy of Mr. Pesch's CV, which we previously submitted. It is now marked as Exhibit A2, and we respectfully asked if we could stip to the qualifications of Mr. Pesch as an expert in planning and architecture and design.
Mr. Pesch, have you been previously admitted as an expert in architecture and design before any zoning boards in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
I have.
Have you ever been rejected for qualification as such an expert?
I have not.
I see that you are registered as an architect, a registered architect in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Has that registration been suspended, or have you been censured in any way in the last 5 years?
No.
I have no further questions. I would recommend acceptance of Mr. Pesch.
If there's no objection from any board member, Mr. Pesch is accepted as an expert in that area. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you very much. Could you describe your responsibilities with regard to this particular project?
We are the architects of record for the project.
And is it fair to say, as part of your responsibilities as architects and planners, you've reviewed the plans and are familiar with this proposed project, which is the subject of the application?
That's correct.
I call your attention to what has been previously marked for identification as Exhibits A3 through A6, and ask if those are copies of the plan summary presentation which you're presenting here this evening as part of this land development process?
They are.
With these exhibits as reference, would you briefly describe these proposed plans?
Sure. So we'll start with Exhibit A3, which is, I believe, the one that's up. Yeah, it should be the existing one. So Patrick, if I could ask you, are you sure this is proposed? So if you want to, I'm going to start with the existing.
I have,
So A3 is the existing plan and also reflects existing campus circulation. It shows, and they're all oriented the same way. The top right on the drawing is Lancaster Avenue. At the top left is Buck Lane. Panmure runs on the left side of the plan. Railroad Avenue is at the bottom here. In gray are all the existing building footprints. In red is the portion of Crossman Hall that's occupied by the middle school. The other portion of that building is occupied by the dining hall and food service facility. In yellow are the pedestrian walkways within the campus, and then you'll see in light blue and also in the arrows are the walkways and the pedestrian walkways at the edges of campus, and shows how that ties in. In dark blue are really the sort of the two major public circulation, vehicular circulation access points. There's a main vehicular entrance from Lancaster Avenue at the top that provides drop-off and pickup space and parking at the upper school building at Wilson Hall. The other major access point is at the bottom from Railroad Avenue. It terminates in a circle and then has a drop-off zone along the lower school for the lower school, the arts facility, Centennial Hall, and the middle school as well, and then surrounding the parking. There is a third vehicular access point, which is on Buck Lane, that gives access to a small parking lot at Palmer House, which is the development office for the school. Those are the only vehicular access points. And again, as Dr. Nagel explained, the proposal is to replace the red area on the plan, which is the footprint, one wing of Crossman Hall, currently 2 floors with a 3-story building, to give additional space for the middle school students.
Before we proceed, Mr. McGarty, did you have a question with regard to A3?
Yeah, the question is where the township line is on,
It's here on the plan.
thank you very much.
So it runs along the yellow walkway that runs along the fields. So I'll take you now to the next exhibit, which will mark Exhibit 4.
A4?
And this really depicts the site plan during construction. So it shows in orange the footprint of the new building, which is replacing again the existing wing. In a red dotted line on that plan, you see would be the construction fence. And then in the gray hatched area is the existing tennis courts, which are located on Panmure Road. And that is the area that we hope to use for a temporary classroom complex. The reason why that is hatched in is because we won't know the exact layout of that complex until the order is placed for the modular units. And so we have a couple of different layouts, but the complex would stay within the paved area of that current tennis court. What you'll also note is that the blue lines for the circulation area, the parking areas, are staying the same. So during construction, the drop-off and pick-up traffic to this campus and onto this campus and parking remains the same the way it is existing. Access to the temporary classroom complex will be from that yellow walkway from inside the campus. And you'll see there is a dotted green line on the plan that is connecting the existing drop-off where students are dropped off today so that they would walk on existing pathways over to that site and then enter the classroom complex. So there is no entrance to the temporary classroom complex anticipated from Panmure Road or any of the other sides, only the side of the campus. The students today, even in their current building, use the library in the upper school, use the auditorium that's in the upper school, and use Centennial Hall, which is the building on that side, as their visual arts complex. So they will continue to use the internal walkways to traverse between the two sites. So that's the situation during construction. Do I pause for questions?
Other questions, yes, with regard to during construction?
What is the, what borders the school property along Panmure? Is that a stone wall, a fence, shrubs, nothing?
It's a planted zone, and I believe there's a fence along the,
Fence along the tennis courts.
yeah.
Then there's a fence along, there's the entire, all of Panmure Road is fenced with the exception of a walkway to the east of the tennis courts.
Yeah, so there is, you see a yellow line on the plan. There is a walkway that allows access to the headmaster's house from the campus site.
And then to the left on A5, left of the tennis courts, there's two rectangles in red. Where are those? Is this residential property?
One of them is the headmaster's house.
Where are we? I'm sorry.
These two properties. One is the headmaster's house, one is an empty lot.
Correct.
So those are owned by the school. And so the walkway along the tennis courts between one of the athletic fields, that way, is connecting to the headmaster's house. That is the lot that has the headmaster's house on it.
And the other rectangles across the street near, are they just
So the ones that are surrounded in red are owned by the school. So this is an open field space, and then there are two properties that have houses on them, also owned by the school, that are occupied by either faculty or staff.
My development director and my athletic director are the other.
The
are
other-
close to that end, and my
Yeah.
assistant head.
Now, only one of you may speak at once so that Arlene can maintain an accurate record, please.
Other two properties towards Railroad Avenue are not owned by the school. They're owned by the college, I believe.
Thank you.
Jim,
To the next bit, which is really the proposed circulation, or proposed plan and proposed circulation. And you'll note that it has, in orange again, the proposed new building, generally in the same location, a 3-story building. At this point, the temporary classrooms have been removed. The tennis courts are back in use as tennis courts. And the circulation and parking system around the campus, again, is the same. So that the access to the campus, the parking is unchanged between existing conditions, the construction situation, and the proposed. The only thing that you'll note is that the main entrance to the middle school today is on the side of the building. And in the new plan, it is relocated to focus towards the entrance to to Centennial Hall and the circle. So that's really the only change on this plan. So we're literally taking one wing out, we're putting a wing back in, and we're adding a floor, which is how basically the modernization has happened on this campus in order to give them more space. Smaller footprints, keep it dense in the core of campus, but go up one floor. And then I have one more exhibit, which is a little bit of a spreadsheet that would sort of illustrate. So this is illustrating in red, in the red bar, the construction duration of the project.
Excuse me, for the record, this is marked Exhibit A6.
So this is trying to sort of indicate when the temporary classrooms would be used and when that would be up. So as Dr. Nagel testified before, the intent is that this project is constructed generally between June of next year, and then the building would be open the following academic year, so it would be September of the following year. So it's a little bit more than a year worth of construction. The temporary classroom complex would be used ideally one academic year, which is the dark blue line that's on this plan. You'll see that both lines have dotted lines, because if we run into bad weather or if we run into unforeseen conditions, we may have to extend construction a couple of more months. So we would go from opening that building in September to potentially opening in January after the Christmas break. And that would mean that the temporary complex would also be used a couple of additional months. So at the top, the aqua blue line shows that ideally the temporary complex would be erected in May, roughly, so that the furniture that has to, and the equipment that has to come out of the existing middle school can move over to that facility. Then the existing building can be torn down, construction can happen, students and faculty move into that project, and then when the building opens, maybe there's a month or 2 months when the facility then needs to be demolished and needs to be removed. And again, it's showing a potential extension in case we run into challenged weather or challenged conditions in site and so forth. So the target opening would be in September of 2020 with the backup date of January of 2021.
Questions with regard to these exhibits, or?
Yes, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Ed.
The question I have is that, are there any plans to use any of the area in Haverford Township for staging area or storage of equipment from the existing wing, or any other use of the fields other than?
No. So if I may go back to the plan during construction, which had a... So Exhibit A4. So Exhibit A4 shows a red dotted line, which is the area around the construction site. That is assumed to be the laydown area and the construction site. Access to that construction site will be from the existing vehicular entrances. The contractor will be asked to have remote parking or any remote area for a laydown area that's not near this campus. So the intent is that the red line is really the only area that's used for construction by the contractor.
Thank you.
Where will the construction workers, how will they come to campus every day?
So the contractor will be asked to rent a temporary parking lot site somewhere, and they will be shuttled to this site. Because the school needs the parking spaces for daily operations as well. And so we carefully crafted sort of both the plan and the staging area so that we're also not reducing the amount of parking that's on campus during construction. So we're literally not changing the whole circulation pattern, other than asking students to walk not from here to the existing middle school, but over to the temporary facility.
But you're not going to have the construction workers park in the neighborhoods around the school?
No. And there will be a requirement that they actually identify a lot and that they manage that as part of it.
Jim, are you done with putting on your case in chief before we ask questions?
No, actually, should I?
Well, we'll ask questions of Martin when you're done with Martin, but, so if you're done going through your exhibits with Martin, then we'll ask whatever questions we have.
Some more for Martin, and that's just some wrap-up questions.
Okay.
Whatever you
Let's
prefer.
do that. That's what we're going to do. You finish your case.
Mr. Pesh, is it fair to say that the modular units that we've described can be considered non-conforming structures?
Correct.
And is it your opinion that they're necessary to promote the proper operation and development of the school's program as described tonight?
Yes, they are.
And is it also your testimony that they will be completely removed at the applicant's expense upon the expiration of the permit of the applicant?
They will.
Is it also fair to say that you're familiar and have reviewed and have had experience working with Haverford Township zoning code and the comprehensive plan, and in particular the sections which are relevant to this application?
I have.
With respect to the comprehensive plan itself, the section on non-residential land uses, goals, and objectives, In your expert opinion, is the proposed plan in accordance with the Haverford Township Comprehensive Plan?
I believe it is.
Finally, with respect to this application, is it fair to say that in your expert opinion, that the proposed plan, and in particular the portions which are the subject of this application, are consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the zoning code as outlined in 182-101 and 182-102A and B, and will not have an adverse effect on public health, safety, and welfare?
I believe so.
And more specifically, is it fair to say that the portion of the property that we're requesting this relief suitable for the proposed use for which we're proposing here?
I believe it is.
And that the temporary use will not detract from the use of the neighboring property or character of the neighborhood? Applicant will ensure that the adjacent area will be adequately safeguarded?
Yes.
And also that the best interest of the township, convenience of the community, and public welfare will be served by the plan as proposed?
Yes, I believe that.
And lastly, that the relevant circumstances of the educational program which was the subject of this testimony and for which this relief is being sought were neither created by the applicant nor the conditions of the zoning district?
That is correct.
I have no more questions for Mr. Pesh.
Okay, now, Mr. McCarty, do you have any questions?
Yeah, the only question I have is the structures that'll be temporary. Are they rented facilities or?
They would be rented facilities.
And you know whether the township will be reviewing them for fire code and everything?
We expect that we would submit those for building permit. So the answer would be yes.
For a building permit, okay. That's all I have.
Kenny?
Yeah, on the rented units, how about plumbing? Is it a requirement for them, or?
Yes, because the temporary complex would basically be a complete middle school. So it would have classrooms, interior corridors, restrooms, and some administrative offices. It would also include a science room. So they would have full plumbing to that facility.
Okay, and so there's a sewer line already there, and they're just going to tie into it?
We would do temporary tie-ins to the existing sewer and the existing utilities on campus.
Okay, that's all I got.
Hey, Casoli?
No further questions.
Bill?
Just a couple questions. So, setback requirements. So will you be asking, you're seeking variances because the modular units will be within the, let's call it a side yard setback,
Actually,
I
no,
guess?
we're actually, the variance that we're seeking really has to do with the time limit, which I'll get to.
Okay, right.
With regard to the setback, we're already non-conforming in the setback with regard to the tennis courts. They're already
But
non-conforming.
they're, okay, but it's being changed from a tennis court use to a structure. I'm just wondering whether you're having a change in use that wouldn't be grandfathered in by your existing nonconformity?
It's really what we're submitting to you, that it is non-conforming and it is grandfathered, and because of the non-conforming, it's accessory to the school's program now, and as these modular units would be accessory to the school's program.
Okay. When you are completed with the new building, you'll get the completion will be marked. Final completion, substantial completion, whatever, whichever one, will be marked by the receipt of an occupancy permit from Lower Merion?
Correct.
Yes.
And how many weeks do you think it would take you to get the modular buildings removed once you have received your occupancy permit from Lower Merion?
So in the schedule, because I don't know, because we haven't selected the modular firm yet. But I would think that it would take at least a couple of weeks to both remove the units, remove the utilities, and then restore the surface of the tennis courts if
Do you think a month would be enough relief?
I would say yes. I would think so. I would think that would be sufficient.
I don't have any other questions. The
graphic, which is a conceptual graphic, is showing about a month and a half at the target schedule and maybe a month, you know, if the schedule has to extend. So my sense is that it's in that range.
Mr. Chairman, I have another.
Yes, go ahead, Ed.
Mr. Rose prompted my mind here to think about a little bit. To bring the trailers in, are you going to bring them in through Penwell Road, or are you going to?
I don't know. At this point, I don't know.
So there's a chance that you're going to have more impacts through circulation to install and take them out, taking the fence down and everything else to get into them, because you're.
Yeah, I mean, the school is in the process of sort of selecting the architect and also figuring out this, the temporary classroom complex. So, so we don't have that level of detail yet at this moment.
Okay, and they're, rather than assume, they are one story?
They are one story.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. My question is really more for Jim. Within the code, the section that you request relief from, temporary permits are, the duration is stated. And then it provides for, it's stated at 6 months with renewals. So
The reason for the request for the variance, we're not requesting obviously any more than 2 years. The reason for the request for the de minimis variance is because of the certainty that we know that it's going to be about 2 years. We're looking for permission. Again, it's going to be less than 2 years, but we're looking for permission so that we don't have a problem, mainly because we can't afford to have a disruption with regard to the educational program. So basically, the way the code reads, we would have to come back, or the applicant would have to come back for each 6-month period at the end of 6 months. And that's our interpretation. I'm not sure that,
yeah, because as I read the code, and I'll ask our solicitor, and if he thinks that's a topic better discussed in executive session, then we'll adjourn to executive session for a moment. But I don't see a provision within our code that would permit us to grant a variance for a temporary permit, because it states 6 months. And maybe if the board were inclined to approve this application, we could build in basically automatic, so long as progress is being made, extension will not be unreasonably withheld, or whatever language, if the application were approved.
As I understand applicant's position, the reason, the need for the variance, the hardship that this section of the code places on the applicant is the uncertainty of what would happen after every 6 months. So the section itself is not going to specify the variance itself. That's actually why the applicant's here, is to ask for that variance, to ask for relief from that particular provision. So am I stating your position correctly?
That's correct.
My suggestion at this point is to simply hear the rest of the reasons for that. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that was a recitation of what you indicated to the board. I want to make sure that that's clear for the board. Is that correct?
That's correct. Basically, the thing that brought us here was the fact that the board has, at least in our interpretation, the ability to issue this application, or issue acceptance of this application for a specified period of time. That the code reads that. However, there's the additional provision of the 6 month, every 6 months. And as you stated, we're looking for the certainty of, which we feel is a de minimis variance from that provision.
So while I understand and can explain to the board the variance itself, tell me why you've referenced it in the application and on the record as being de minimis.
Well, I can tell you what I would say, basically, that, and I was going to have our expert testify to that. Could I leave it till the end and I will address it, or it's up to you?
Yes.
Basically, our expert will testify that the request is a minor deviation from the current zoning ordinance, and that rigid compliance with it as written right now is really not necessary to protect public policy concerns of this ordinance. And so that's really what, and we would then refer to the case law that supports that position. Which now means I don't need my expert. Thank you. Can I proceed, or?
Please.
Any other questions before we move on? Ken, Bill?
No.
Ed? Ed?
No questions.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
I'd like to call Patrick Spellman, please. Mr. Spellman, can you provide your name for the record and be sworn? Oh, I'm sorry, you need to be sworn in.
I'll do it. I just want to, is his CV part of your exhibit package?
Yes. CV would be,
All right. Please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Your full name and the capacity in which you appear this evening, please.
Patrick Spellman, project engineer. I'm sorry, what was?
Go ahead, Jim.
okay. Mr. Spellman, could you please provide a summary of your education and experience?
Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from Lehigh in 1984. I've been working as a civil engineer ever since then, the last 15 years in land development
And where are you,
in the state of Pennsylvania. Yeah.
and where are you currently employed?
Site Engineering Concepts in Berwyn.
We have submitted a copy marked A7 of Mr. Spellman's education and his CV, and we'd respectfully ask that we stick to his qualifications as an expert in civil engineering.
Mr. Spellman, have you testified before zoning boards or courts of common pleas in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the past as an expert in the field of civil engineering?
I have.
Have you testified before this zoning board, if you recall?
No, I've never had the pleasure, no.
Have you ever been denied the opportunity to testify as an expert in the field of civil engineering?
I have not.
Okay. And over the past 5 years, has your licensure in the Commonwealth been suspended, or have you been censured in any way?
I have not.
With that, I recommend acceptance of Mr. Spellman as an expert.
Okay, if there's no objection from any of the board members, we'll accept Mr. Spellman as an expert in the area of civil engineering.
Thank you. Can you please, Mr. Spellman, describe your responsibilities with respect to this particular application?
Yeah, it's the project engineer for the site development portion of the project.
And have you worked on and thoroughly reviewed the plans which were previously submitted with this application?
I have.
You heard previous testimony this evening regarding the existing conditions on the site. Would you verify that they are, in fact, the existing conditions?
Yes, I agree with the testimony.
And I'm going to ask you not to describe or completely go through summarize the existing conditions. However, is it fair to say that the application, the subject of this application, as identified on your plans, shows a project which is in Lower Merion Township in the center of their campus being developed for their middle school, and that the project, which is part of this application, is really in Haverford Township?
Correct.
And are the plans which were prepared by site engineering, do they fairly and accurately depict those which are the subject of this application?
They do.
Could you briefly summarize what these plans are?
Right. So do you want to,
Looking at A8.
this is A8. Excuse me. As Martin has testified, the existing Crossman Hall will be demolished and a new middle school will be built. While they're building it, they will have the middle school students in temporary units on top of the tennis courts.
Okay. And is it fair to say that you're familiar with and have reviewed the Haverford Township zoning code, specifically the sections which are relevant to this application?
Excuse me, yes, I have.
In what zoning districts are the portion of the property which is the subject of this application located?
It is in the R1A district. The zoning boundary, the township boundary line is running right along the walkway above the tennis courts. The zoning boundary, the district boundary, is about a quarter of the way into tennis courts, R1A, institutional.
And in your expert opinion, is it fair to say that the proposed uses, both existing and planned, are either permitted or are non-conforming in these districts, and are in accordance with the requirements of Articles 2 and Article 6 of the Haverford Township zoning code?
I would add that I believe that the tennis courts are considered structures by zoning definition.
And in particular, I call your attention to 182-1004A, subsections 1 and 2 of the Haverford Township zoning code. And I ask you, have you reviewed these code provisions in preparation for this hearing?
I have.
And in your expert opinion, does the plan as proposed comply with those provisions?
It does.
In particular, is it also fair to say that in your expert opinion that there's no new planned or expanded use or change in number of participants or operation that the proposed temporary use of this tennis court portion of the property?
Correct. That is for existing population.
And it will have little or no effect on the provision of public services at the site?
Correct.
Fair to say that the adequate standards of parking and sanitation are being provided?
Correct.
And that where applicable, adequate access egress measures have been taken to consider and protect major streets from effect of undue congestion on highway traffic?
Yes.
And is it fair to say that adequate provisions for water, sanitation, and public safety will be provided in accordance with 182-1004A2H?
Yes, it will. It will.
Additionally, in light of tonight's testimony, would it be your expert opinion, based on the evidence presented, that the authorization of a temporary permit for a specified period of time as a special exception for this non-conforming structure would promote proper development in the community as long as it is completely removed upon expiration of the permit at no cost to the township?
Yes, I would.
And lastly, is it fair to say that in your expert opinion, the request for a variance from the 6-month time limit of 182-902F to be replaced by approval of a 2-year time period is justified as de minimis in that, 1, the request is a minor deviation from the zoning ordinance,
Yes.
and lastly, that rigid compliance is not necessary to protect the public policy concerns of the ordinance?
Correct.
I have no further questions.
You agreed with everything Jim said.
The right questions.
You put the words in my mouth.
Questions? Kenny?
No.
Bill?
Just wanted to confirm if I could, Mr. Spellman, it's a little hard to read the area bulk charts, but I'm presuming in here that you've got them laid out, and the point is that you either have an existing nonconformity that's not being changed or exacerbated, or that you are in conformity with the area and bulk requirements,
Correct.
in all cases.
Yes. Yes.
It was a compound question. Multiple compound.
Yeah, I agree with the comment and yes to the question.
Yep. Thank you.
Ed Casoli?
No question.
Ed McGargy?
No questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Can I offer, just to Ed's comment about how the trailers would come in? Something I just want to point out. There is a slope, a little bit of a slope along Pamure. I'm not too sure they can bring the trailers in this way. As I was looking at it, I think the only way is coming across this field to get there.
What do you say?
Again, it will be decided.
When you say this field, just for clarification of the record,
There is an open field. I'm not too sure if it's a soccer field at this point or not.
just where is it on the Exhibit A?
Oh, yes, it is on the corner of Railroad and Panmure.
I just wanted,
Yeah, understood.
Thank you.
Yes, understood. Sorry.
Anything further? And
The only question I have is you handed up your packet of exhibits, and there is an Exhibit A9 in there.
Right.
Do you want that as part of the record? If so, we're going to have to identify it and indicate what it is.
Thank you. Would you describe Exhibit A9 just for the record?
Yes. Exhibit A9 is a detail of the tennis court area, showing the tennis court with relationship to the township line and the zoning line in Panmure.
Thank you.
I take it you want to move all your exhibits into the record?
We do, please. Thank you.
The third minute. I have a question for you. So we're going to go into executive session. I have a question. I telegraphed what it was already, so it should be no surprise. You may want to look at our code again.
Okay.
So we're in recess.
Thank you.
We'll reconvene the meeting of the Haverford Township Zoning Hearing Board of Thursday, September 20th, 2018. Okay. Jim, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, there isn't. Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Kenny?
Yeah, just one quick one, the exhibits that you shared with us when you had your public meeting, were these same exhibits shared at that
You
point?
want the neighbors' meetings?
Yeah,
No, the concepts were, but the plans weren't in place. In other words, with the discussion, my understanding, I don't want to speak for Dr. Nago, was that we discussed what our plans were, but I don't, we were there.
So we had site plans, we had massing plans. We didn't have the full circulation plan as it was laid out tonight. But the basic site plans we shared.
and the tennis court provision there.
Yeah, we talked with them about the tennis courts and that plan. Yes, we did. And they asked about, circulation, access to those units and so forth. So we made the same points and promise to them that we would use the existing network of roads and pathways.
Thank you.
Bill, questions?
No other questions.
Ed Casoli?
No questions.
Ed McGargy?
No questions.
Okay. With that, I'll ask if there's anyone present that received certified mail that wishes to testify, anyone present that received regular mail, any other residents of Haverford Township. I have to do it for the record. I know the room's empty.
That's why I was sorry she left.
I'm getting a look. Okay, with that, we'll close the record on this case, and if my fellow board members are prepared to vote, we could render a decision this evening. Kenny, are you prepared to vote?
I am.
Bill, are you prepared to vote?
I am.
Ed Casoli?
I am.
Ed McGargy?
Yes, sir.
And as I already stated, I am as well. Bill, would you like to take this decision, please?
Yeah, with respect to zoning hearing board matter Z18-27, I would vote to approve the requested variance of section 902F to allow the applicant a 2-year temporary permit, subject to the following conditions. I'm sorry, grant a special exception from the provision of 902F to allow them to extend the permit period for 2 years. Subject to the following 2 conditions. One, that the temporary buildings will be removed upon the earlier of the 2nd anniversary of the date hereof, or within 6 weeks of the receipt of an occupancy permit from Lower Merion Township. And the second one is it would be, construction will proceed in accordance with the notes of testimony.
Ken?
I agree.
Ed McGargy?
I concur.
Ed Casoli?
I agree.
And so do I. That application is approved, 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other administrative matters? Going once, going twice. We are adjourned.
Have a good evening, John.
Thank you, you too.
I like to say goodnight.